I convene the April 1st, 2024 Physical Plant Committee meeting to order at 7 p.m. Jackie, please call the roll.
Karen Larson.
Here.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
Josh Martin.
Here.
Tatiana Weinstein.
Here.
Will Savage.
Here.
Agenda item 2 is the opportunity for visitors to speak. Public comment is for the general public to address the board. Each person will have up to 5 minutes to provide public comment. See anything? Did we get anything? Okay, moving right along to number 3. Item 3 is to approve the minutes of the October 23rd, 2023 Physical Plant Committee meeting. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the October 23, 2023 Physical Plant Committee meeting minutes.
I second.
Okay, do we have any discussion?
No, thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Okay, item 4 is the facility update. Would you please update the committee?
I will. So I've got a couple items to bring to your attention. First on my list is that the wall cladding in the meeting rooms, as you can see, has been done. So it is both rooms. It took them about 2 days last week, and they did an excellent job. So it's looking sharp.
Looks nice.
Remind me again what it's made of.
So it is a plastic sheathing. I think it's half a millimeter thick.
Sure. It's really good.
And so, yeah, it protects the walls from any incidental dinks and hits, from particularly the chairs and the tables when we're taking down and setting up the rooms.
Very nice.
Yeah, so it's looking sharp. They did a great job.
Yeah.
I'm happy with their work. So you may have noticed our parking lot seal coating job that was done last May is looking a little thin. Some of the arrows, previous arrows, it can be seen through the coat that was done last May. So I'm working with Mark to figure out what we can do to remedy the situation, as it was part of the project scope to have that done last year. So talking with Mark, let's see what our options are. Same thing with the light fixtures in the north lobby. We discussed at the last board meeting that there's some cracks on the fixtures that should not be there. Waiting on a response from SNH. They've taken a lengthy vacation. So working with Mark, I'm waiting to hear back from Mark and Kamosi and SNH about what we will do about that.
I think it's cracks in the drywall, right? Or is it cracks in the fixtures themselves?
Did I say, I'm sorry, it's cracks in the drywall around the fixtures. My apologies, thank you. We had the plumbers out to address some flushing issues in the second floor restroom and the men's restroom on the east side here. Those are all well. The fixture in the janitor's closet on the receiving end was also not doing great. So they came in and had to replace a little small piece inside the fixture, and all is well now. So that has all been handled. And then finally, Adult Services has let us know that particularly in the evenings, the nook that was formerly the JH area that is now our magazine newspaper area in Adult Services, there are no actual light fixtures over that area. So when night falls, it gets pretty dark in that corner. So I've contracted, or I've talked with our electrician to get 2 additional lights that would match the ones that we have currently on the floor over in that area. And we are about 2 weeks out from delivery of having those in. They're keeping me posted. They've sent me tracking, all that fun stuff. Once they have everything they need, it'll be about a week until we get those installed. Once I can get them
And they're
scheduled.
those little, like, I think the square
It's the
can
little
lights.
3x3
Yeah.
squares. Yeah.
It'll just add, because
Sure.
I don't know why there weren't additional lights put up there, but the corner is like a little dim, so.
Yeah. And that's all that I have to report for today.
I have a question. Maybe you said this in seal coating. It says every 2 years,
Yes.
so we're doing it a year ahead of time? If you think it needs to be done now?
So I think that the job needs to be, while we still have a little bit of leverage on Kamosi with our year warranty, if we can figure out this is not held up to what we would expect,
Sure.
what can be done about this?
Yeah, this is the first year I've seen it fade away so
Worn
fast.
so much, yeah,
Yeah.
well,
You know,
construction, traffic and, right? I mean,
Well, that was why we
No.
had them do it last year because of construction traffic. Because they did it last May over Memorial Day.
Right.
We haven't had any heavy construction
right.
traffic since
Yeah.
then.
maybe it's the product that was used that wasn't really up to snuff, but it's just so much thinner than,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
It's not like we've had really bad weather where they've had lots of
Exactly.
snow
Exactly.
plows, lots of
Mhm.
salt,
Right,
that kind of thing,
Yeah.
so.
looking
Okay.
into it.
great,
Okay.
okay.
So, item 5. Agenda item number 5 is the LLD property overview and project concepts discussion. Tatiana, would you please walk us through the packet contents?
So this is where we're gonna all talk a lot. But what I'd like to do is go through the packet first, because there's a lot of different items in here. I'll walk through the packet and then we'll like circle back to some things so we can
Okay.
talk about it.
Okay.
So let's go to page 4. This is just the FQC summary page that we've seen before. You'll notice that I highlighted some areas here that are recommended, that we address before the end of 2024, and 2 other projects that need addressing sooner than the indicated timelines. I did leave out install storage room humidity control system. This was again recommended by FQC, but Will and I have walked through it at different times of the day. We don't see a need to do this. It's just, I think he put it in there because every area of the library has, I mean, we have humidity controls in every other area except for the storage room, but we've never seen any like detrimental effects regarding humidity in all my time here. We also did not address the storage room in our renovation. We didn't address really any of the behind the scenes mechanical rooms or storage areas. And I think FQC put this in there just prior to our renovation to consider, but we've just not seen a need for it. So I left that out, but obviously up for discussion. And then masonry planters was left off because, again, this is for 2025 to 2029. That area is the kind of stepped area on Front Street where we've got, I mean, he's calling them masonry planters, but it's really the retention wall. I guess you could plant things there too. But they're still holding up, and we can visit this again next year. I did highlight the east mechanical boiler. It says a replacement between 2026 and 2029, and we'll get to the HVAC stuff in a moment, but if we were going forward with a major HVAC package, I would include it in there, and we'll get to that, like I said, in a moment. And then the east condensing unit, it says 2030 and beyond. It was replaced in 2008, but we've had a number of repairs done to it, and our current HVAC vendor has said that we should replace that within, didn't he say 2 years? He said that a year ago. So within a year, he's recommending replacement. So that's what's on this particular page, just to get an idea of projects. They're also highlighted because we would, if we move forward with a new special reserve ordinance, I would recommend adding these projects to the special reserve ordinance. So moving on to page number 5, it's related. This is just a section of the HVAC costs, and again, this is FQC estimating costs. So the east boiler, the east condensing units, way back in 2019 is when this report was done. He's saying they were in good condition, not great, but good, and then replace as needed. So this is the estimated numbers on this sheet. On page 6 and 7 is just example of, well, it's our current special reserve ordinance with estimated costs for additional campus enhancements, just in case we required professional assistance for whatever next project we were going for. So it's still current, even though the renovation is on here, we still allowed for extra assistance if we needed like a professional engineer, or if we were going for construction right away, which we're not going to, but we left that in there. So this is still a valid special reserve ordinance, but I'd like to revise it for in the next month or two. And that's why that's in here, just for an example. And then moving on to page 8 is an example of what an updated version of the special reserve ordinance could look like. And we will get back to this in a moment. So obviously all the reds are up for discussion. And then I included at the bottom the 3 items that were off the FQC report. But we'll get back to this in a second. On page 9, this is just to give you an idea of what we're spending over a 2-year period on equipment, on HVAC equipment. This outlines repairs, replacements that have been done in 2022, 2023. Thank Jackie for putting this together for us, just to give us an idea. And this is just strictly repair and replacement. That does not include any maintenance costs, because we have maintenance plans with each of these vendors. So it does not include, well, the 2 vendors, Monaco and Sendra. We have maintenance plans, and that's when they come in and just do their quarterly maintenance with us. So this does not include those numbers. This is just repairs, replacements over the last 2 years. Okay, and then when we move on to 10 and 11, these are just some visuals of the 2 properties that are adjacent to the library. So first we have Kingston, 4931 Kingston. At the top is what you see from the sidewalk, and there's really no grand entrance. The arrow shows how you enter, and then once you're on the property, when you walk straight in off the sidewalk, you see the neighbor to the right, and then the library is on the left. And it's a pretty flat area. And then on page 11, this is the Front Street property. So the first image is when you're standing on the sidewalk looking up, it's a slight slope up, and then there's a lot of trees behind it. And then the lower image is you're still standing facing south, and the library is to the right. And you can see there's like an image of a car. You can see the pergola to the right. So you're seeing it, the library on your right hand side there. Okay, and then pages 12 and 13 are the plats, but we have larger versions in front of you because these are just far too small to look at. And then, because I knew there would be questions like, you know, about the real estate documents, those are just added here, just for added information on costs and things like that, of what library paid for each property. So that's the packet. So let's go back and talk about the HVAC system first, because I think the committee understands that we need to update our BAS, which is the software, and other components of the HVAC system. So Will has had a couple of conversations with 3 or 4 vendors.
4.
Okay, 4 vendors. And without divulging estimates, because they were ballpark estimates, we're looking at probably $100,000 or more to replace the controls, all the thermostats, the system software, and that's controls on both sides of the building.
Yep.
And if we wanted to add the condenser and the boiler, that would be definitely over $100,000 project. So the good news is we do have funds in our special reserve. The more complicated news is if we go for a project like this, we would have to go out for bid. And I did talk to the attorney about that. So to do that, we would have to work with a project manager so that we could pull the expertise from an engineer to draw up the specs for the RFP for us. So we have a relationship with CCS. I would like to work with CCS if we went forward with a bid package for something like this. They know our financial situation. They know the library very well. And it would also be nice to stay with CCS and also work on the projects that we're talking about in terms of the 2 vacant lots. It's kind of killing 2 birds with 1 project manager. So for the HVAC bid project, we can I'd like to move forward with this as soon as possible. I mean, we'll talk about it in a second, but before like the summer heat hits us. So including the BAS controls, thermostats, condenser and boiler, if you all agree to that. And for those of you unfamiliar with the bidding process, we would work with CCS to draw up an RFP. And they would, again, work with an engineer to look at all the specs. We'll have some documentation from the library, from the renovation, also from the vendors who came in and provided him with ideas for what we need to change up. Then we would set a date, we would publish it, publish it via project manager sites. They send out the call for bids. We would publish it on our website. We'd have a date and time for them to be delivered to the library. Our CCS, if we choose them, they would be here on that date. They would open the bids. They would call out the bids, and then CCS also reviews all the bids, even though we are subject to the lowest qualified bidder. But before we go forward with any person who bids out on this project, CCS would have to review all the bids, make sure that everything we asked for in the scope of the project was in the bid, because it's happened where, you know, the lowest qualified bidder leaves something out, and then you go with this person and you're like, wait, we needed this done, and it wasn't in that project. So that's why you want a project manager to review all of them. And then we would go with the lowest qualified bidder. So that's the HVAC project. Do we want to talk about it? Are
I
we?
have a question.
Sure.
We replaced our air handlers,
Yes.
so I'm assuming we can reuse them.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? And is the committee okay with working with CCS on this?
I agree.
Okay. I think we've had a good relationship with them, and I mean, they came in as the lowest qualified project manager for our renovation, and we've had more than excellent service from them, so.
We currently have maintenance contracts on this equipment, right?
On which equipment?
Well, we're talking about all the HVAC?
We have maintenance.
Maintenance.
Like filter replacements and
Oh,
things
just
like that.
general.
Yeah,
There's
so
no-
that spreadsheet you see are above and beyond the maintenance.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Would any of the people that are our vendors, would they be the ones that might be installing the equipment?
It would be whomever the bid goes to. Yeah, I mean, they're welcome to bid the project.
So if we went with CCS and they served as our project manager, I believe we've got two different systems. We've got train equipment and carrier equipment. So would there be a way, I think you and I discussed this briefly, you combine the systems, you get something that, you know, it's two different.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really, that the equipment is different. It's just a different manufacturer. But you certainly want everything to be coordinated, so you don't have, you're not,
So it's more
you're spending more
compatible?
money if you have to contract with two different.
Right.
We wouldn't do that. I mean, go ahead, Josh.
No, I was going to say, along those lines, as part of the bid, can it be a reevaluation of the system requirements versus a like-for-like replacement?
For
Okay.
sure, and that's why we want to go with like CCS, because
Right,
they have
exactly.
under their
Right.
umbrella engineers who know this stuff, right?
Okay,
So
sure.
they will suggest
Okay.
the way we
Right.
move forward.
Okay.
This will also, going this route, as part of this, the scope of a replacement for the condenser and for the software, this will also take us out of the two vendor relationship we currently have with Precision and the mechanical equipment vendor. So we would have like one entity to work with.
Right.
That's what I was getting at, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. But you were also correct, we do have different kinds of equipment. We do have carrier equipment and we do have train equipment.
Well, it's difficult not to when you've got a building this old. I mean, you're not going to, but
Right. So are we okay with at least engaging CCS and talking about,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. We'll
laying
start
out the scope of this project? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, let's move on to the big question mark, to the vacant lots. So I will start with the desire to develop the land on Kingston, so that we can utilize it for programming space and a possible like pocket park. Right now, we utilize the east end parking lot for our library-wide programming. That takes away parking spots
Right.
from people who come. So what we'd like to do, or at least staff would like to do, is develop the lot on Kingston for sure. And then when we're not using it for wide-scale programming, having like a pocket park in there, some seating.
What's a pocket park?
It's not like a huge, like community park, that's a park. A pocket park might have like 1 or 2 pieces of equipment, and maybe a picnic table,
Right.
benches, something like that, that the general public can come and use.
Right.
And it's not like a full-scale park. So that project would likely involve like slight leveling of portions to make it ADA compliant.
Right.
Creating a walkway from the library to the property, most likely fencing between our lot and the neighbor.
I was going to say, what's the zoning on this right now?
Residential.
It is, so we're limited to 6 feet on a whatever the roadway frontage is. So 6 feet is the height that we could do on the fence. Because I think it's only commercial properties or residential properties that are fronting some other type of roadway. You could go higher than 6 feet.
I
I'm
wonder.
just-
Well, we had some difficulty, was it because on the lot that abuts the Front Street property,
Yes.
we had some discussions. Was it because we were talking about changing the height of that fence, an existing fence? This would be new fencing. You know how the zoning requirements are they're pretty strict in Lisle. Just want to avoid, if it's new, is it easier to get
I don't know. Is 6 feet sufficient, or would we want higher than 6 feet?
We might want a little higher, but we'll
I
see,
think so.
there are
Yes.
landscaping things we can do too.
Yes,
Okay.
that's true. We
You
could do
know.
a fence and then trees.
Yeah, so I mean, there's choices.
Okay.
So, looking into that, and then also some select playground equipment would be part of it.
Right.
And potential curb cutting, if we wanted like a drive, in case we wanted to drive something up in there, not sure, I mean, it depends on the plan, okay? So that's ideas.
Does the park district have any desire to provide input here? I know we don't have to, it's ours, we can create a park of our own, but is there any benefit to involving them?
I would think the only benefit would be financial sharing of costs.
I-
I'm not so sure that we need to, in terms of
Right.
need to outside of financial, because
Mhm.
we'll get to that in a moment, but if there's a way to share financial or any costs, that's an option.
Right.
Because maintaining a park, I mean, we already maintain the lots themselves. It would just be like equipment maintenance,
Right.
but it depends on the equipment we get. You
Right.
know, we have some picnic benches out here, we have the
Right.
pergola area out here, we maintain those, so
Mhm.
it's really up for the committee to talk about. And then the Front Street lot is the other opportunity, so obviously the library can choose to sell the Front Street lot and or Kingston, it's up to you. So that's an opportunity to sell. And then if we were to develop it, it has been suggested that we could make it like a sort of nature preserve or
Yeah.
nature walk area, native planting area. We could have like a pathway, educational signage,
Right.
kind of green space. And then having something a little less developed, it could be developed further
Right.
down the line if we needed to. It too would require some leveling for any pathway to be ADA compliant.
Yeah.
I don't
quite-
know how
quite
much
steep.
we have to make it ADA compliant. Like if we create some space for ADA accessible
Right.
and then others not, I'm not sure on the, like,
Yeah.
ratio. We would also probably do fencing there between the neighbor there and whatever we accomplish. And potentially clearing some aged trees from the back of the lot. I mean, we would do that anyway because we do that every year. We take down some old diseased trees, so.
I don't suppose we know the constituency of the trees on that lot today, do we? It's probably just all invasive, whatever grows, because it's not been purposefully planted, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there, I mean, every year we are expending funds on removing some of the
Right.
trees that are like kind of tipping
Yeah.
into our lot.
Right.
So there are some older trees there.
Might be a benefit to even think about removing more of them and making it a very purposeful, like, native planting, but,
Could be.
what is this? Is that an existing foundation from prior
That-
ownership?
That it is not there, that is where that building previously was.
So there's nothing
There's-
remaining from that building?
There's nothing remaining.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't think so, but I was very curious. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so we all know we only have so much to expend
Mhm.
on both or either. And things to think about, we don't have to do both at the same time. We could do one and the other and project plan for a couple of years ahead of us, depending on what we wanna do. But we can plan for it, and that's what we do with the special reserve ordinance, it's just plan. It's not like a yearly thing. The special reserve ordinance can stay intact for 5 years, as long as we outlay what we want our plans are. So the other option for funding, Josh brought up partnering with an intergovernmental agency. I've looked into parks grants for things like this. I'm looking into other grants out there, but we do need a direction to go in terms of going for grants, talking to a project management firm like CCS, like where's the committee, where's your mind on what we'd like to do with this stuff, with these lots?
Remind me again, the Kingston property square footage? I'm sure it's in here somewhere. but
Yes.
Handwritten
It's-
notes
I
from
think
40,
it's-
50, 60 years ago.
It's like, it's almost an acre.
Really?
Yes.
Which lot?
Both.
Both? Oh,
Both are very
combined.
close to an acre.
Really?
Oh,
Oh,
both.
wow.
Yes, it's a
Wow.
long
Much
skinny
larger than I
acre.
thought.
It's like this. Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
I think it's just under an acre.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Isn't it in there? No,
No, it's not.
it's not.
It's, I'm sure it's on the consolidation
It's in
plat described, but that's a lot of typewritten that I can't. Wait, there it is.
I thought we had that number. I can't read this small.
This is hard to read.
I mean, you can see it on this sheet a little better. I mean, just the
Right,
size
yeah.
of it.
Right. Yeah.
It's, I think they're just under an acre each.
Okay.
Thoughts?
I would, oh, go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead, Josh.
I would be more in favor of developing the Kingston property before the Front Street. It feels like even if we did a small amount of work, there's much more to do on the Front Street property. And whether intentional or accidental, all the trees there are kind of a benefit. It's better than the Kingston lot does look kind of scraggly to some degree, just
just
undeveloped,
open there.
open. Yeah, and I think we could get a much greater return on investment if we were to have some kind of outdoor space for programming and the community overall.
I agree with that. How does, I have two questions. How does that address the parking? Yeah, I mean, we would have increased participation if we offer more programming in the Kingston lot. You mentioned parking. that the new space here, I don't know if that took any parking away, did it?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
it did,
Took
yeah.
a lot of parking.
See, I never go back there, because
Well,
without,
you come to the events.
oh, to the events, yeah.
But it's a good, I wish I could count for you right now.
No, I believe you, I guess, I always walk over because I live so close that I'm not familiar with parking.
But, I mean, it's kind of hard to count on here. I mean, it's about, I would say, 30 or so spots.
Yeah,
Or more.
easily.
Or more.
We're giving up for the renovation, is that what you're saying?
No.
For the programming.
So when we do library-wide
We
programming in
close
the
off
back
at
here,
south.
Oh,
we
okay,
section off
gotcha.
30 or so or more spots.
So we would no
Gotcha.
longer use that space for that, because we would have, if we
Right.
develop Kingston,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
a wash.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so we'd have the parking spaces.
It's almost 40 spots.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
right. So
And then
issue- yeah.
secondly, should we, not maybe now, but if we eventually think we may sell Front Street, we've got more assets to work with for whatever. I mean, I think we're looking at it now that we might develop both at some time.
Mhm.
And is now the time to possibly talk about selling one? Well, I was very surprised at the purchase price of Front Street.
So was I.
That it just blew me away.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get that now.
Well, that was
I mean,
in 2004.
2004, yeah,
right.
And we
But
bought it from the church.
yeah.
Well, that, probably some of it, but we would, I think somewhere in the process, what do you call it? An appraisal? We probably don't have any clue what that's worth now.
I think you can see other lots out there. I know there's not a lot of almost acres out in Lisle open, but I'm not sure how much we could
But
get.
just a thought about that.
You know, the other thing I'm looking at, if we look at this property, right, we see that it's a pretty steep grade in the front. What is it, 6 inches to, or 60 feet to an inch on the scale, something like that? You know, in the first, basically 100 or so, 120 feet, first 2 inches, you know, what, is there any need or desire, instead of trying to treat this as an entry off of Front Street, to develop east from our parking lot? Not that we need additional parking, but if there was any space that we needed, we don't have to develop the entire property. If we're looking at the back half, I mean, if I'm starting here and I see these different topographical lines, 717 to 726, so like the back 200 feet is only about 717, about 10 feet of elevation. So there is some opportunity. We don't have to develop the entire thing, but if we did want more space and we wanted to expand something, I think it would be a much easier discussion to talk about grading the back portion of this lot and utilizing it off of the parking lot. Again, for programming or something else, as opposed to saying, well, we can't get in from the front because it's so steep, right? Just acknowledge that and then, you know, just use the back half. Because we still have access to it from the east.
Yeah,
or
that's
west.
an option. There are a lot of trees where you're talking
There
about.
are.
And there's fence there now, and I'm not sure, is there a ravine?
Yeah, there's a lot of intense spots.
Like right here?
Right here and right here, where there's a pretty sharp shift in a short amount of, like there's a 4-foot drop.
Yeah, I'm really talking in front of that area.
Okay.
So we'd have, like behind that, I'm seeing really from the 717 contour line, which is roughly in line with this
Yeah.
second stanchion bollard bump out backwards. Because I can see what you're talking about back there. There's a lot of trees. It's pretty steep in front of that, fairly level behind that. Not quite as level as the other one, but just
Something to explore.
something to think about is, instead of trying to figure out how we level the whole thing or have people walk up a 15 or 20-foot slope, just, we've got a nice piece of maybe a third to 40% of an acre there, and maybe the front side just stays undeveloped.
Just grass.
Yeah,
and sit
or
and have a
something.
picnic.
Exactly, I don't know. But just another potential option instead of trying to figure out how we access it from
Like
this way.
regrade the
Right,
front.
exactly, that's not gonna happen.
Well, there would be a lot of regrading back there. We have that huge, well, not huge, very large manhole. Remember where we had the drainage?
That's not on the side of the Front Street side. That's
It's
in the
not.
back, yeah.
Well, it's straight, well,
It's
It's-
like
it's in
if
the
you're staring
corner
this
of
way,
it.
it's that way. And we're
No.
talking about this way.
well, but when you're talking about that way,
Mhm.
it's in the east end corner and down. If you go back, I mean, when you walk
It's
all
like
the way back there.
southeast, yes.
Yeah.
Southeast.
I mean, it's,
More south.
it's not on that lot, but it's close.
It's more on the south side of the,
No, I agree, I'm not, anyway, the drainage issue, because that really,
there is.
major.
Yeah.
I think my point was just, we have some other options for this property. I don't know that selling it, especially as deep as it is
I'm not, don't get me wrong,
Okay.
I'm not promoting selling.
okay, okay.
No, I just, if we don't touch it, we leave it alone, I mean, somewhere down the road, it's income,
Yeah,
it's a source of revenue.
that's,
Potential.
Yeah, right. I think we could do more with it than just outright selling. We could,
yeah. Could we, as part of this, knowing that we really are more interested in this Kingston property, still have some proposals developed for the most cost-effective utilization of this front street, that if it is accessing it from the back, if it's doing something else creative, I'm by no means knowledgeable in hardscape or landscape or what things are happening right now. But I think at the very least, it would probably be advantageous to say, okay, we really want to develop this one for programming space. While you're out here doing a plan, can you just take a look at this and maybe not even put something in a planned format, but say, hey, here's a couple of options that would be viable.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if
Okay.
we engage an environmental engineer, whoever, for the Kingston,
Right.
we can absolutely ask them, like,
Okay.
what do you think? Is
Okay.
this the grading too crazy?
Right.
Is this, it's not even a ravine, it's just a ditch.
Yeah.
But, like,
Right.
is this too much to, like,
Right.
I mean, you can do anything with enough money, but,
Yes.
we want to know what is feasible for us, so we could do that for sure.
Yeah, right.
But I wouldn't authorize them to spend $10,000
Exactly.
developing a plan or anything.
Correct, exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. I don't want to spend even $5,000 for that. But if they say, hey, listen, for an extra $700, we can give you 3 or 4 ideas,
Right.
great.
Yeah, I'm sure that anyone would be willing just to talk about what
Okay.
could be done. But also think ahead for the special reserve ordinance. So if we wanted to retain the lot, maybe putting in some money just for the public to understand that we are thinking about Front Street and using a professional service to help us get there. If we
Yeah.
don't want to consider it, that's another topic. Any other thoughts about both of these, like properties?
I guess one question I have is, at some point, there will be an increase in Lisle population if Maine and Ogden does get developed, and there's some other talk about townhouses getting
It's-
developed.
Those are getting built this summer, starting.
So at some point, the library will increase some usage. I mean, I don't know population-wise how that impacts the library. But as library usage increases, parking space utilization will increase. And at some point, some of this, like you were talking about, additional usage of the back end.
That was actually my first thought. was if we can somehow easily expand more spaces there.
Right.
Easily.
I mean, especially
That's a great question.
if we don't have, you know, we can utilize the Kingston for
Mhm.
programming, and we don't have the ability to properly develop this within a reasonable budget. But if there's a way, if we had to use part of the Front Street lot
Mhm.
for parking, I know parking is not cheap, I know asphalt isn't cheap.
Yeah,
People-
it's not sexy either, but that's
No.
fine.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But at some point, we may need, I don't know if you can estimate like how
Yeah.
utilized the parking lot is today.
Yeah. It's-
Just from working here every day in the evenings, I mean, we are fine. People have learned south side parking is more expansive. People who utilize the youth services department park on Front Street.
Mhm.
It's kind of like been finding its way, and we've not been overwhelmed. The only time we're overwhelmed is when we have outdoor programs.
Right.
Right.
So,
How many total parking spaces do we have?
gosh, maybe 140?
Okay. Oh,
36?
that's
Somewhere around there. Yeah, it was.
That feels like a lot.
Because
I think-
Compared to
Yeah.
other
Like a lot.
libraries, we're
Yeah.
ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And
But that was my thought too.
if we free up the spots we use when we're programming now, our special events, how
Mhm.
many spaces would that be?
40-ish.
40-ish.
That, I
30
mean,
to
that's a
40.
lot of
It is a lot.
spaces.
It's a lot.
So my personal opinion, I'm sorry, you have the floor, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, as the population that the library has to serve
Right.
grows, I just like this, having this lot available for the possibility of expanding
Parking.
parking.
Should it be?
And we
later?
don't have to pull the trigger on doing anything on Front Street. And as Josh mentioned, these developments are happening in downtown Lisle within the next year or so.
Should be.
I mean, who knows if they get filled in a year or not.
Right.
It's gonna be some time before I think we see huge population increases, so.
Even when we do have
Mhm.
super busy days, like last week spring break was happening and it was cold and wet, and so youth services was bonkers, and so was the rest
I
of the
love
building.
that.
Yeah.
In my previous time on the public desk during times like that, I've never heard someone say they couldn't find a spot to park.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So parking has never, not
Yeah.
that it won't ever become an issue,
No.
but
I don't think.
it has never been a concern that patrons have brought to
Right.
public staff.
I don't think we need.
I
to
would
solve
hate to
that one
consider
proactively.
Selling this and saying, oh, wow, a lot over here came available, let's consider buying it and having patrons walk 2
Yeah.
blocks, you know?
No, absolutely. No, I just, that was not me saying that we need to get rid of the lot. That was me saying that, where we stand now, parking is fine, but who knows what will happen, like you said, with the new townhomes in 5 years, in 10 years. That may be a concern then.
Yeah,
And honestly, I mean, it could be a combo of what you're suggesting and having like the front part be more natural native plants. I mean, you could do, 2 years down the line, our parking lot's full every day. We might want to consider like a little edge nook parking area and then the rest being native plantings or something like that. But
Right.
I don't think that's something we do now, because we
Right.
just don't know. So if the committee is more comfortable, like, holding off on Front Street for now, that's fine, and we can like verbally get some information from an engineer who could say, the best use of this land would be X, Y, and Z for you. And like looking at, financial considerations and everything now that we're looking to develop Kingston. Is everybody on board about
Mhm.
Kingston at least?
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is talk to CCS, and maybe we can invite Mark to another physical plant meeting, you know,
Mhm.
after talking to him, and he can come, he can do some preliminary measurements of, you know, we've got all this plat stuff, but he's gotta go out there and take a
Right.
look, engage an engineer, and before we go there, we'll get costs before we
Mhm.
pull the trigger on that. And in concert with that, have him get their HVAC engineers to talk about what we're talking about as
Mhm.
far as an RFP goes. Does that sound okay?
You know,
Mhm.
getting back to the Kingston lot, I know you mentioned Pocket Park. My opinion is I would like to see the emphasis of that lot to be used for programming. I mean, I understand some park and some recreational aspect of it, but I'd like the emphasis to be used for programming
Mm-hmm.
in you know, the world according to Liz, you know.
Do you pay a higher insurance premium? Like if you have like park equipment and it's on our property and if somebody gets hurt, I mean, like, how is that handled?
Well, we have insurance for any of those
Well, I
cases
understand
now.
that,
Yeah,
but I mean, would it increase?
I don't think it would, unless, and again, I'm kind of in Liz's side here. I would see some small equipment that we would want in there, but I don't see us kind of taking the role of the park district and having a very large facility, you know, maybe some things for youngest patrons to use, but to me, then it looks like what we have down in youth services to begin with, which, even though it's really small, a little climbing wall, a couple other
Mhm.
things, you know, not too much more risk than that is what I would envision. So I'm thinking in terms of a park, you know, a couple of swings and something small that's really more focused on programming and I even think that maybe if there was the ability to, it is an acre, have more of like a, you know, trail sort of walking thing on it of some kind of mixed media. So that it can be used when it's not in use for programming, just simply because it's completely underutilized, maybe even not utilized today.
We've used it, but
Right,
it's not accessible.
Right.
It's
right.
wet sometimes.
So that it's still, you know, even if it's like a little nature walk sort of thing where we can put some outdoor education in terms of the plants or plaques or something like that. So it's more than just staff-driven programming, that there's still the opportunity for patrons to utilize it at all times, things like that.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's been to the Arboretum at one time, and I don't know what it looks like now, but at one
Mhm.
time you could take kids there and they could turn things
Yeah.
and line them up and, you know,
Yeah.
make a picture of a dog line up
Right.
and you'd get like 3 different sections and then other things
Mhm.
assorted. And I would see things like that
Right.
more in the realm of what a library would provide as opposed to, you know, like you were mentioning, not having
Right,
big old park equipment.
right, yes.
I mean, even having something like, I can't remember where I saw this, but there was like a big stone turtle, and it was really big, but it's
Mhm.
low enough to the ground, kids can
Mhm.
climb on
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Something like that.
Right,
It's over
Yeah.
at Dragonfly Landing.
Hmm?
It's over at Dragonfly Landing.
Not there. It was another city,
Okay.
but it was very
No.
cute.
do they have one at Dragonfly
They do.
Landing?
They've got
Is it-
they've got a
is it
frog
stone?
over there.
Frog, thank you, that's what it is, I was
Yeah.
just gonna say.
It is,
Maybe
yeah.
Dragonfly
I never
Landing,
saw
yes.
that. Okay.
Yeah,
Seen it?
My son likes it.
Okay.
actually, you mentioned that, Dragonfly Landing is kind of a good analogy, aside from the giant thing in the middle of it, but it's much more natural feeling. You know, things that are lower to the ground, it's much smaller from a park installation standpoint.
Well, utilized in the summer on hot days by many parents,
Oh, yeah,
the little ones.
yeah, I'm not saying any water at all. No, no water.
No
water.
Just the necessary lighting that
Talk
we'll
about
have to have
liability
for
stuff.
it, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Okay. What would be the minimum requirement for the programming space? Are we talking about permeable stone surfaces? Are you talking about paving? Are we gonna keep it like natural, organic materials?
Well,
What are we gonna have to
so
do?
from my very
Yeah.
limited education of watching PZC meetings, either it's permeable or we have to allow for
Mhm.
drainage.
Right.
So we have drainage on the library side of the world
Mhm.
versus the Kingston side. But we may have to add additional drainage if we went with like hardscape, you know.
Does the drainage have to be on that lot, or can we
That's what I'm saying.
offset it on the other one?
We may be able to.
That would be a great use of that lot.
I mean, that
Do all of your water reclamation there.
that little retention or detention space, I mean,
Mhm.
it's pretty substantial. And it does get filled when we have really heavy rains.
Probably
not
pretty
filled,
full
filled.
right now.
But, I mean, we had
Yes.
that like gutted out like over a couple years ago, if you remember.
Yes.
So everything's moving along, it shouldn't be full, but, we've had some,
Mhm.
you know, instances
Okay.
where it got pretty full,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great environmental engineering question.
Hence hiring professionals,
Uh-huh.
their business, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the lots?
Just, you had mentioned something about curb cutouts. What vehicular traffic are you envisioning would potentially be needed there?
I just threw it out there as a potentiality because I was thinking when we do larger scale programs, sometimes we have,
Churros truck.
well, the
Oh.
churros truck can go into the library lot, but the other things I was thinking about, like the drop-offs for the big bouncy
Like
houses.
the bounce houses, the dunk tank, or
Right.
Who else are we, like dunk tank
Yeah.
guy?
Yeah.
Things like that, and we may want a driveway, at least, you
Right.
know,
Right,
something.
access that can
Well, even the animals.
withstand.
I mean, I think, when you have a petting zoo type thing, you'd probably want the animals
The
to,
trailers.
to get as close as
Yeah,
possible.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
A very good point. Okay, that's good. And then where would you envision access being? Adjacent to the south entrance or from the corner?
I would
Okay.
say from the corner, like where the sign is when you drive in, I don't know, like behind it, I would see a path from the parking lot, from the sidewalk in. But again, we need an engineer because there is some retention area there too, so
Mhm.
I'm sure they could give us a number of options.
We just build a little bridge over the
Yeah,
retention area.
exactly.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
I think someone brought
Nice
that up
curved
once,
bridge.
yeah.
And now we're on to something. Here
And we could
go.
fish.
You
Oh, and
could-
fish.
Or we could have like a donation well and people can just throw their
There,
coins
oh,
in.
There you
I
go.
like that, yes.
Oh, boy.
Hey, we're brainstorming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts? Okay, so I just wanna come away from this is Kingston, we're looking at, we're good with CCS, with coming to our next meeting. Also CCS in developing an RFP for the HVAC components we are interested in.
Yep.
And we'll start that process, and I will share with everybody, and at the next board meeting, which is coming up, what we're talking about in terms of costs, because if we engage CCS, there's a contract with CCS, there's a
Yeah.
contract for RFP, write-up, and all that, so.
Is CCS broad scope in terms of all project management? Are they
Yes.
well equipped to handle environmental engineering?
They have engineers on staff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, I guess I should see it.
And
Landscape.
Mark Rogers is an architect,
Okay.
yeah, he's a professional architect / project manager. So. Okay.
Are we doing item 6 or did we,
Well, item 6 is,
the special
we
reserve?
kind of talked about item 6. So if we go back to, is it page 8? Yes. We wouldn't be drawing this up today. This is just for discussion purposes. So, under facility repairs and replacements, that red line there, that ballpark number, that 0 there, we would need CCS to help us with what is like the not to exceed number,
Mhm.
so that the public knows we are saving this much for this project. So like if it's 150,000, that number would go there. And we would not bring this to the board until we had those ballpark numbers. So I would imagine, not in April, not in May, maybe in June, we would update this.
Okay.
But this was just to show you what it could look like.
And that'll then encompass the capital improvements projects?
Yes, the Kingston,
Mhm.
and we might wanna put in a little line
Front.
for Front Street in terms of like professional assistance
Mhm.
monies for potential development. Just potential on everything, so people know.
Mhm.
Good.
I think we've covered everything then, right?
Yeah, if there's no other discussion,
Right.
ideas.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is to adjourn. We have a motion and a second.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion?
I don't think so.
Okay, we are adjourned at what time?
We
Yeah.
can vote on it.
Aye.
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 7:56.
7:56.